Now we will give you a brief summary of some things that you have to know when recording transactions. The first thing is being able to change the view of the register window. Notice the register window has a traditional look like a real bank register that you would write out by hand in the days before the computer. This means there was always a white and a green line for every one transaction, and all the information about the transaction was spread out across two lines rather than one. For some people, it would be much better if we had one line per transaction. If you move the mouse pointer to the bottom left of the register window, click this box, and now every transaction will be recorded on one line rather than two. Notice it still has a field for each piece of information that you need when you record the transaction. It's just easier to see one line at a time. Here are more transactions to enter. Can you predict the results? January 4 deposited $7,000 into the bank account from the cash register. That's the total from the daily cash sales of January 4, and the bank gave slip number 0002. This is what the transaction would look like if you recorded it in the register window across one line. After you click record, the balance of the bank account should be $16,000. The cash in bank is $16,000, and of course the daily cash sales should be $17,000 after this transaction. What about this one? January 5 paid UPS $900 for a delivery, and we gave them check number 3. This is the way that check looks if it's recorded across one line. When you click record, click yes for the pop-up. The ending balance goes down to $15,100. So the trial balance shows cash and bank $15,100, and delivery expense showed up for the first time as $900. How about this? January 6 paid Verizon $800 for telephone, and that's check number 4. This is the way that transaction looks recorded across one line. After you click record, the balance of the bank account should be $14,300, and in addition to that, telephone expense should show up for the first time as $800. Something interesting happens if you have a second transaction with the same vendor. Can you predict the results? For example, January 7, we paid Con Edison $700 for electricity, and we paid with check number 5. Now, when we put this into the register window, we choose the date, January 7. Luckily, QuickBooks remembers the check number that we're up to. It's number 5. But look what happens at the moment we choose Con Edison. Aha! Notice QuickBooks remembered that the previous Con Edison transaction had electric expense, and therefore this transaction is likely to have the same expense if it's the same vendor. So QuickBooks is trying to help you by suggesting the same expense account that was used in a transaction with this same vendor. The money amount was $700, and of course push tab to save the field, click record. Click yes to go past the pop-up, and notice cash and bank is down to $13,600, and notice electric expense now has $1,200 as its total. Now, this is the electric expense general ledger account in the chart of accounts. The trial balance is only showing the total. If you want to see every transaction in any of these general ledger accounts, all you have to do is double-click on the total, and you can see the individual transactions listed here. When you double-click on one of the totals in the trial balance, the account itself opens up with a list of every transaction that has affected that account. Here's the January 3rd check for electricity, and here's the January 7th check for electricity. What about this one? January 8 paid Verizon $600 for telephone with check number 6. Well, let's take a look. January 8, check number 6. Look what happens at the moment we choose Verizon. QuickBooks remembered that telephone expense was associated with a previous transaction from Verizon, and therefore when you chose Verizon, telephone expense came up automatically. The money amount is $600, and of course we push tab to save the field, click record to save the transaction, click yes to pass the pop-up, and now we have an even $1,300 in the bank. And notice telephone expense is now $1,400. We can double-click the total of telephone expense and open up the actual account to see a list of every transaction that we wrote for telephone expense. Did you know you can add a vendor or an account to the list of vendors or the list of accounts at the moment that you record the transaction? This way, if you have a new transaction with a new vendor or new account, you don't have to leave the transaction window to add it to the list. For example, on January 9, we paid a new vendor, Joe's Distributor, and we paid him $1,000 for products we sell. We used check number 7. We have to put Joe's Distributor on the list, and we have to put on our chart of accounts a new expense called product expense. We can do this at the moment we record the transaction. So, January 9, check number 7, Joe's Distributor is not on the list. So all we have to do is click Add New, and then we make sure we're adding a vendor, click OK. All we have to type in is the name, Joe's Distributors. Now when we click OK, Joe's Distributors is now on the list. Same thing with an account in the chart of accounts. Click the pull down arrow to get the existing accounts. To add an account on the fly, click Add New. Notice QuickBooks remembers, or assumes, let's say, that this new account is an expense, because that's what the accounts usually are. That's usually the account type at the minute we record a check. And the name of this expense will be Product Cost. When we click Save and Close, Product Cost, the expense, has now been added to the list in the chart of accounts, and we can now put it with this transaction. The money amount is $1,000, and then when we click Record, click Yes, the trial balance is now down to $12,000 in cash and bank, and now we have this new expense, Product Cost, that tracks how much money Joe paid for his products.